Hi, I'm Professor Steiner, and I'd like to talk about a concept integral to our system, American Combato, and that is something that I wrote in a little manual I produced in the early 70s called The Tactical Skills of Hand-to-Hand Combat. I said that self-defense is war in microcosm, and that elicited a lot of oohs and ahs, and points of disagreement arose here and there among people. But I really think that it's obvious that that is true. In war, you are opposed by an enemy. In self-defense, you are opposed by an enemy. You're not opposed by the kind of opponent who you might meet in competition or the practice partner with whom you drill in class. In self-defense, you are being attacked by someone who seeks to victimize you. Sometimes, in a worst case scenario, they may seek to kill you, rob you, rape you, beat you, kidnap you, push you around, humiliate you, shoot you, stab you. You don't always know, and you can't read minds. You must assume that anyone attacking you intends you serious harm. And if you do assume that, you're making an assumption very similar to the assumption made by a national leader or national leaders when a country is attacked. And you go to war to defend your country. You go after the enemy to save your country. This was evident in World War II. We were attacked, we went to war. We went after the enemy. In military training, this I don't think is any longer true, but when America was enjoying its halcyon years, it was true. And that is that the military were trained when going to war to dehumanize the enemy. Without going into details, I'll just tell you that a friend and student of mine many years ago when I lived in Arizona had fought on Guadalcanal in the Marine Corps during World War II. And he told me about little booklets that were written, distributed only amongst the Marines. This was not published, using horrible references to the Japanese enemy, really derogatory language, very profane expletives, and so on. I'm not going to repeat any of it, it's not necessary to. But the idea was to make the Marines think that the enemy was less than human. Well, the advantage you have in the street is your enemy is less than human. You don't have to dehumanize him, he's dehumanized himself. Anybody who chooses to victimize someone has chosen to dehumanize himself. He's certainly less than a human being as far as I'm concerned. Civilized human beings don't deal with each other by attacking them and beating them or robbing them or killing them or raping them or so on. So your opponent has taken care of a good deal of what you need to have in your own attitude. He is despicable, he is contemptible, he is less than human by his own choice of lifestyle and actions. Your responsibility is simply to defend yourself. Go after him. You're at war. He started the war, you're going to end the war. Thinking about self-defense as war in microcosm, you need to understand that hatred, resentment, the desire to inflict injury is a legitimate part of how your psychology must operate when you're acting in desperate defense of your life or the lives of your family members. During World War II, to use another example from the war, the Marine Raiders, there was a movie made about them, you probably saw it, Gung Ho. The Marine Raiders had a very tough course of training, and the capstone to it, the final exercise, before they were dispatched overseas, The instructors took the raiders on a tour of Pearl Harbor and had them observe the wreckage, and they would tell the Marines, take a look. That's what you're avenging. That's what the enemy did to our people. The idea was very simply to foster aggression and hatred toward the enemy. Now, my suggestion to my students for many years has been, read the newspapers, listen to the news. If you have law enforcement officers among your friends, speak to them, they'll clue you in. Or if unfortunately you know somebody who has been the victim of a violent attack and has survived it, speak to them. Speak to these people. Find out what the real attackers are doing. Read about how they brutalize their victims. You're not preparing for a match when you prepare for self-defense. You're preparing for a survival situation in which your very life may be at stake. And as I said, you're not a mind reader. You can't read the assets and intentions that are presented to you when anyone attacks. He may look like a kid, but he may have killed before. He may be very polite as he approaches you and set you up. I don't know what will happen. You don't know what will happen. You can't tell the capabilities or intentions of that attacker. Years ago in Florida, I believe it was, a very tragic thing occurred. A 14-year-old girl was walking past, I believe it was a car wash facility. All of this was caught on surveillance tape, surveillance camera, and I saw the film, so I know what happened. And this man walked up to this girl, appeared to say something, and it looked gentle to me, took her arm, and they walked off together. Now, the appearance was that of maybe a father or an older brother or an uncle showing up and guiding this young lady to lunch or dinner or taking her home or whatnot, telling her her parents wanted her. He abducted that girl, he raped her, and he murdered her. Now, that was not apparent by his first intention. You may be attacked by someone whose initial move against you is to grab your jacket, push you, grab your arm, get into a boxing stance, or just threaten you. He may say something, hey man, you ain't going nowhere. Well, nobody has the right to restrict your movement if he's not a sworn law enforcement officer and stopping you because there's a probable cause to do so. Anybody who stands in your way, and when you say, excuse me, but I want to leave, and he stops you, that's an attack. Now, I don't know what his intention is. You don't know what his intention is. He could be anything from a practical joker to a murderer. And sadly, your assumption has to be that he just might be the worst, and you deal with him. In war, you do not attack the enemy with cream puffs. You do not use actions intended to intimidate, control, or as must be done sometimes in law enforcement, to arrest and take captive. That's a secondary concern. You act to destroy the enemy. The military exists to destroy and to kill. Now, that's not a popular statement, that's not a popular concept, but it's true. And self-defense, our system exists to teach you to be able to stop an assailant decisively. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have to use lethal force every time. Hopefully you'll never have to. But it does mean you have to be optimally aggressive, and you go to war against that opponent. You attack and you keep on attacking. You attack and you don't stop until you're safe. And once you're safe, it's over. But it's not over until you've won the war. Self-defense is war in microcosm.